I thought I was just going to my daughter's housewarming to support her, but when she told me to leave, everything inside me flipped. That's when I decided, if she wasn't going to respect me, maybe it was time to remind her who was in charge. So I bought the whole block and raised her rent. Before we continue, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I honestly love reading each one. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Now, enjoy the story. I'm Marlene, and I'm 55, living in a small suburban neighborhood. I work part-time at a local library, though I mostly keep busy with knitting, gardening, and the occasional bridge game with the ladies from church. I've never been someone to stir the pot. At least, that was before my daughter Lacey threw her housewarming party. It wasn't like I was a stranger to big moments in her life. I was the one who raised her, after all. I was there for her first day of school, her high school graduation, and her wedding. But now, she was living in a trendy neighborhood, doing better than I ever had. She'd invited me over to show off her new place, and I'd thought it was a nice gesture, a sign that we were both moving forward, and maybe, just maybe, this would be the start of a new chapter in our relationship. I arrived on time, as any good mother would. The door swung open, and there was Lacey, looking fabulous as always. She had on a tight black dress with a deep neckline that made her look 30, even though she was pushing 40. "Mom, you made it," she said, her voice all bubbly and excited, though there was a strange undertone. I smiled, happy to be there, but the room felt off. The decor was too modern for my taste. No warmth, no soul. I walked inside, taking off my coat, and that's when I heard it. A small voice, sharp with irritation. "You can't stay long, Mom. The party's really for my friends." Lacey's words hit me like an ice-cold shower. My heart did a little flip, but I didn't let it show. I smiled, though it felt stiff on my face. "I thought I was a part of your life, honey. Aren't I invited to the party?" Lacey rolled her eyes, clearly impatient. "It's not about you, Mom. This is a celebration for me. Just go out back, have a drink, and let me enjoy my new place. Please." She gestured toward the door as if I were some kind of nuisance. For a moment I froze. A chill washed over me. This was not how things were supposed to go. I'd raised her, made sacrifices, supported her when no one else did. And now, here she was, treating me like an unwanted guest. It was like she was embarrassed of me, maybe even ashamed. I wanted to say something, anything, to tell her how I felt, but instead I just stood there, dumbfounded, until she walked away, leaving me alone in the hallway. I went to the back porch, just as she'd told me, and poured myself a drink. I tried to hold it together, but something inside me snapped. This wasn't just a rude moment. This was a pattern. My daughter had become someone who thought she could toss me aside whenever she felt like I was disposable. As I sipped my drink, I watched the party unfold through the glass door. Lacey laughed with her friends, clearly enjoying herself. I, however, felt invisible, small, and the more I thought about it, the angrier I got. Who was she to treat me like this? Wasn't I her mother? I had given up everything for her. Something inside me stirred, a thought that began as a whisper but quickly grew louder until it was all I could hear. She wanted me gone? Fine. I could show her. I could make her understand that you don't mess with people who care about you. I finished my drink, grabbed my purse, and walked out of the house, feeling a spark of determination burning inside me. It's funny how quickly life can change. 1 minute, you're standing in your daughter's house, feeling like a stranger in your own family, and the next, you're plotting revenge. But that's exactly what happened to me. I went home that night feeling hollow, like the wind had been knocked out of me. I thought about calling her, asking for an explanation. I thought about going back there, demanding respect. But something told me to just wait. Let her think she had won. Let her feel comfortable in her little world. And then I had an idea, a dangerous, unexpected idea. I didn't rush to act. I let it sit with me for a few days, like a seed planted in the back of my mind. It grew, bit by bit, as I replayed that moment over and over. The way Lacey had looked at me with that impatience, that subtle disdain. Like I was an old, irrelevant part of her life that didn't fit into her shiny new world. I wasn't going to beg for her attention. No, I was going to show her the cost of dismissing me. The cost of thinking she could treat me like an inconvenience. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how much control I actually had. All those years of being the supportive, quiet mother had made me underestimate my own power. But I wasn't just Marlene, the mother who raised her alone after her father left us. I was someone who had worked hard, saved my money, and built a life that didn't depend on anyone, not even her. I had enough money to do something she'd never see coming. And that's exactly what I was going to do. The next day, I started making calls. First, to a real estate agent who knew the area where Lacey lived. I found out that the entire block was owned by a single property management company, one that happened to be selling. As soon as I learned that, the idea fully formed in my head. I wasn't just going to buy a house or two. No, I was going to buy the whole damn block. I had the resources, the means, and now, after that party, an overwhelming need to make her understand the consequences of disrespecting me. By the end of the week, the paperwork was done, the contracts were signed. I owned it all, the entire block. And as for Lacey's house, it was right in the middle of it all. Now, I had a choice to make. The next part of my plan was simple: raise the rent. I knew she was struggling a little with her mortgage. She had mentioned it once during one of those rare moments when we'd actually talked like mother and daughter. I knew this would sting. I knew it would hurt. But she needed to feel the weight of her actions. I didn't want to do this. At least, I didn't think I did. But the more I thought about how she had humiliated me, the more it felt like the only way to teach her a lesson. I wasn't doing this to ruin her life. I was doing it to remind her that family was something you couldn't take for granted. I called the property management company and gave them the go-ahead to increase the rent on the entire block. By the time Lacey got her first notice, it would be too late. It wasn't long before Lacey started calling. At first, it was a few confused, almost innocent questions about how everything had changed. She had no idea, but I could hear the panic creeping into her voice as she realized that her entire world was about to be flipped upside down. "Mom, what is going on?" she asked over the phone. I could almost picture her pacing around her sleek kitchen, a glass of wine in her hand as she tried to piece it all together. "Why is my rent going up? This is insane. You have to do something. Please." I leaned back in my chair, the phone pressed to my ear, and let the silence hang for a moment. I wasn't going to rush this. This was her moment to fully understand what I was capable of. "You really should have thought about that when you told me to leave your party, Lacey," I said, my voice calm, almost detached. She paused, and I could hear her sharp intake of breath. "Are you serious? This is about that? You're punishing me over a stupid misunderstanding?" I wanted to laugh. A stupid misunderstanding? No. This wasn't about the party. This was about respect. And if she couldn't see that, then maybe she needed to learn the hard way. "You disrespected me, Lacey, and now you're going to feel the consequences. Don't you worry, though. You'll get used to it." I could hear her cursing under her breath. Then, finally, she snapped. "You can't do this, Mom. You think you can just take control of everything? I'm not some child anymore. I won't let you ruin my life." I stayed quiet for a moment, letting her words settle in. "You'll be just fine," I said, a small smile tugging at the corner of my lips. "Just remember, family is a two-way street. You can't treat people like dirt and expect them to keep showing up at your door. Not anymore." I hung up before she could say anything else. That night, I stood in front of my kitchen window, looking out at the empty streets. My mind was racing. This had gone far beyond what I had initially intended, and now I wasn't sure what the next step would be. Would she come to me and apologize? Or would she keep fighting me every step of the way? I didn't know, but whatever happened, I wasn't backing down. The days following that phone call felt like an eternity. I sat in my house, watching the world move on while my daughter tried to make sense of the mess I'd just thrown into her life. She called me a few times, but I ignored the messages. I wasn't going to engage with her on her terms anymore. That's the thing about parents. Sometimes we think we know what's best for our children, but it's easy to forget that they grow up and make their own choices. Lacey had done that, and I'd let her. But now, it was my turn to make the decisions. I'd expected her to fight back, to argue, to plead. But what happened next caught me off guard. It wasn't the anger I expected, it was desperation. It started on a Wednesday evening. I was sitting at my dining table, sipping a cup of tea and reading a book when my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen and saw Lacey's name. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to answer and hear her out, maybe even soften a little. But the other part of me, the part that felt burned and betrayed, told me to stay strong. I let it ring. A minute later, another message popped up. "Mom, please, this is ruining my life. I'm begging you, I'll do anything. Just talk to me. I can't afford the new rent. I'm going to lose my home." I sat there, staring at the screen for a few moments. The words hit hard. I knew she was serious. I knew she didn't have the savings to keep up with the hike in rent. But that's exactly why I did it. She needed to understand what it felt like to be on the edge, to be vulnerable, to realize that not everyone would always catch her when she fell. Still, there was a little part of me, the motherly part, that felt a pang of guilt. I took a deep breath and let it go. I was doing this for her. I was doing this so that she'd learn to appreciate the people who stood by her. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I went about my evening, pretending as though nothing had changed. But I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The next day, I was walking through the park near my house when I ran into an old friend, Linda. We used to be close back when Lacey was little, before life got complicated. We stopped and chatted for a while, and, as always, Linda was keen to know what I was up to. "You seem different, Marlene," she said after a few minutes, eyeing me like she could sense something was off. "Is everything okay with you and Lacey?" I hesitated, unsure if I should tell her the truth. But in the end, I couldn't help myself. I'd been carrying this weight for days now. "I did something," I admitted, lowering my voice as I glanced around. I bought the block where Lacey lives, and I raised her rent." Linda's eyes widened in shock. "You what? Oh my God, Marlene, what are you doing? That's your daughter." I shrugged, trying to act casual, but I could feel the tension in my chest. "She disrespected me, Linda. I thought she needed to learn that you can't just treat people however you want. I had to show her. This was the only way." Linda shook her head, looking both concerned and confused. "You can't really be serious, can you? I get that she's hurt you, but this is extreme. Are you sure this is the right thing to do?" I wanted to argue with her, to tell her that she didn't understand, that Linda wasn't the one who'd been humiliated. But instead, I stood there quietly, the silence between us thick and uncomfortable. She could be right. I wasn't sure anymore. But what I did know was that I wasn't going to turn back. Not now, not after everything that had happened. It was the following Friday when I finally caved and called Lacey. She answered on the first ring, her voice frantic. "Mom, please, you have to help me. I've been calling everyone, trying to figure out a way to make this work, but it's impossible. I'm not going to be able to pay the new rent. I can't afford it." Her voice cracked, and for the first time in days, I could hear the fear in her words. I felt a small tug in my chest, but I pushed it away. This was for her own good. She needed to be put in her place. "Lacey, listen to me," I said, my tone firm. "I've been patient with you. I've supported you your whole life. I didn't do this because I want to see you suffer. But maybe this will teach you to respect the people around you, especially your mother." There was a long pause on the other end. When she finally spoke, it was barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry. I was wrong to treat you like that. But please, Mom, this is too much. I don't know what to do." I sat there for a moment, feeling the weight of her words settle on me. It wasn't easy to hear her like this. The anger I'd felt earlier started to fade, replaced by something else. A strange mix of guilt and relief. "I never meant to hurt you, Lacey," I said quietly. "But I had to do something. You treated me like I didn't matter. And now you see what happens when you take people for granted." There was another long silence, and I could practically feel her weighing my words. Finally, she sighed. "I get it, Mom. I do. I'm sorry. I've been selfish. I was just so caught up in my own life that I forgot how much you've done for me. But I don't know how to fix this. I can't afford the rent." I bit my lip, unsure of what to say next. Part of me wanted to relent, to tell her I'd help her out. But the other part, the one that had suffered for years, the part that was tired of being pushed aside, knew I couldn't go back on this. "I'm not going to lower the rent, Lacey, but maybe we can figure something else out. Maybe you could get a second job, or maybe move into a smaller place for a while. But the decision is yours." She didn't say anything for a long time, and when she finally did, her voice was small and defeated. "Okay, Mom, I'll figure it out. I'm sorry." I hung up, feeling like I'd just opened a door I couldn't close. I thought the worst was over. I thought after the call with Lacey that things would settle, that we'd both find a way to move forward. But life has a funny way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them, and this was no different. For a few days, there was silence. It was the kind of quiet that makes you wonder if things are truly resolved or if they're just waiting to explode later. I tried to convince myself that I had done the right thing, that Lacey needed this wake-up call. But the guilt kept clawing at me. The phone call where she had sounded so defeated replayed in my mind, and I couldn't escape it. One evening, about a week after the rent increase took effect, I was sitting in my living room flipping through a magazine when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. Maybe it was a neighbor or one of the other tenants from the block. But when I opened the door, I didn't expect to see Lacey standing there, her eyes red from crying, her posture slumped as though the weight of the world had settled on her shoulders. "Mom," she said, her voice cracking, "we need to talk." I stood there, frozen for a moment, unsure of what to say. This wasn't how I envisioned this going. I had expected her to come around, to make amends on her own terms, but the desperation in her eyes, it made me pause. I stepped aside and let her in. She didn't even look around at the house, at the place I'd worked hard to create over the years. Her focus was all on the conversation she had come here to have. We sat down in the living room, and for a long time, neither of us spoke. The tension between us was thick. Finally, Lacey broke the silence. "I don't know what to do, Mom," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm barely scraping by. I've cut down on everything, canceled subscriptions, stopped going out, but it's not enough. I don't know how I'm going to make the rent next month." I nodded, trying to keep my face neutral, but inside a part of me softened. She was struggling, and it stung to see her like this. It wasn't that I didn't want to help her. It was that I needed her to understand why this had happened. "I get it," I said slowly, choosing my words carefully. "But Lacey, you need to understand what this means. I didn't do this to hurt you. I did it because you need to learn that actions have consequences. You can't keep pushing people away when you need them most." She looked down at her hands, fidgeting nervously with her fingers. "I know," she said quietly. "I really messed up. I thought I had everything figured out, but I don't. I thought that because I was doing well on my own, I could just push you aside. I didn't appreciate you, or anything you've done for me." Her words, raw and vulnerable, hit me harder than I expected. For a brief moment, I was that mother again, the one who wanted to hold her daughter and tell her everything would be okay. But that mother had already let go. I wasn't that person anymore. "I've always been there for you, Lacey, through everything," I said, my voice firm, but not without a hint of sadness. "But you pushed me away. You treated me like I didn't matter. And now I need you to understand the impact of that." She nodded, wiping a tear from her cheek. "I'm so sorry, Mom. I don't know how to fix this, but I want to. I'll do anything. Please, don't leave me like this." Her plea made my chest tighten, but I didn't show it. I couldn't. This was the moment when I needed to make it clear that my actions were meant to force her to change, to see the bigger picture. "You don't get to ask for everything back just because you're struggling now, Lacey," I said, trying to steady my breath. "But if you want to fix this, you're going to have to show me that you can respect me, that you can appreciate the people who've been here all along, even when you didn't realize it." She looked up at me, her eyes full of guilt and determination. "I'll prove it to you. I swear I will. I'll make it right." I took a deep breath, looking at her with a mixture of regret and hope. Maybe she could turn this around. Maybe this would be the wake-up call she needed. But whether or not I could forgive her, or if I could ever trust her in the same way again, that was something only time would tell. The next few weeks were a blur of uncertainty. Lacey started taking on extra work, juggling odd jobs here and there to make ends meet. It was strange seeing her hustle like that, seeing her put in the effort she'd always been so reluctant to put in before. Part of me was proud, but part of me still wondered if this was just a temporary change. Meanwhile, I kept my distance. I didn't offer her money. I didn't show up at her door with groceries or anything like I used to. I had to stick to my decision. I had to let her feel the weight of her own choices, even if it hurt me to see her struggle. A few weeks later, I got a call from her. She sounded different this time, stronger, more confident. "Mom," she said, her voice steady, "I figured it out. I found a way to pay the rent, and I'm going to be okay. I just wanted to thank you for teaching me this lesson. It's been hard, but I think I understand now." For the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. Maybe it was working. Maybe the lesson was finally sinking in. But before I could say anything, she added, "And I'm sorry for everything." I didn't say much in return. It wasn't about me, not anymore. It was about her finding her way. "Just take care of yourself, Lacey," I said quietly. "And remember that I'm always here, even when I seem distant, but you've got to keep earning my respect." "I will," she promised. "I swear I will." As I hung up the phone, I couldn't help but feel like something had shifted between us. Maybe this was the beginning of a new chapter in our relationship. Maybe I could finally feel like my daughter respected me again. But even if things didn't go exactly the way I wanted, at least I knew I had made my point. The power had shifted, and for once I wasn't the one being taken for granted. Days turned into weeks, and things between Lacey and me began to settle into a new rhythm. I didn't hear from her as much as I used to, but I noticed subtle changes in her behavior. She was more thoughtful, more careful about the way she spoke to me, the way she handled her responsibilities. It was hard to tell if it was all real or just temporary, but it was enough to make me wonder if the battle I'd waged had been worth it. One evening, I was sitting at the kitchen table with a glass of wine, thinking about everything that had happened. I ran my fingers along the rim of the glass as I replayed the conversations, the decisions, and the moments of tension. The hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the house were the only sounds in the room, but inside my mind, it was a storm of questions. Was I doing the right thing by keeping my distance? Was this enough to make her change? Just as I was about to put down my glass, my phone rang. The caller ID flashed Lacey's name. I answered with a deep breath, steeling myself for whatever was next. "Hey, Mom!" Lacey's voice came through the line, calm, but with a hint of nervousness. "I know I haven't talked to you much lately, but I wanted to let you know something." I sat up, the glass of wine now forgotten in my hand. "What is it, Lacey?" She paused for a moment, and when she spoke again, her voice was firmer, more resolved than it had been in the past. "I've been working 2 jobs, and I've cut back on everything. I'm starting to save up. I'm almost caught up on the rent, and I'm going to keep doing whatever it takes to stay ahead. I don't want to lose this place, Mom. I don't want to lose you." I felt a strange twist in my chest. There it was, the moment I had been waiting for. It wasn't just that she was paying the rent, it was the fact that she was taking ownership of her choices, facing the consequences with a kind of maturity I hadn't seen in years. "I'm proud of you," I said, my voice softer than I intended. "I'm glad you're figuring it out." She sighed in relief on the other end. "Thank you, Mom. I really mean it. I don't know how to say it, but I want you to know that I get it now. I understand why you did what you did. It wasn't just about the money or the rent. It was about me growing up. And I'm trying. I really am." I felt a lump rise in my throat, but I held it together. "Just keep it up, Lacey. Keep doing what you're doing. I'm not going anywhere. But I need to see that you're not going to make the same mistakes again." "I won't," she promised, her voice firm and determined. "I swear I won't." For the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. Maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something better for both of us. Maybe Lacey was finally learning the lessons I had tried to teach her all those years. But even as things seemed to be improving, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something wasn't quite right. I had spent so much time focusing on Lacey's growth, but I hadn't been paying attention to myself. The truth was, I was still carrying the weight of everything that had happened: the hurt, the humiliation, the years of feeling unseen and unappreciated. It had all built up inside me until I didn't even know who I was anymore, apart from a mother trying to fix everything. I had always prided myself on being strong, on holding everything together. But lately, I was starting to question whether that strength had made me lose sight of my own needs. Had I been so focused on Lacey's future that I had forgotten about my own? A few weeks later, I found myself at the local coffee shop, sitting in the corner booth with a latte in front of me. I had come here to think, to sort through the emotions that had been building up since I'd made the decision to raise the rent. But even as I stared out the window, watching the world go by, I couldn't focus. My mind kept drifting back to the same questions. What now? What was next for me? I wasn't sure what I expected, but I knew that something needed to change. I couldn't keep being the person who put everyone else first. I needed to figure out who I was without the weight of everyone else's problems hanging on my shoulders. I needed to learn how to let go, to move beyond the role I had played for so long. As if on cue, my phone buzzed in my bag, breaking me out of my thoughts. I dug it out and saw a message from Lacey. "Mom, I need your help. I'm in trouble. Can you please come over?" I stared at the screen for a long time, the words sinking in. She had asked for help before, of course, but something about this message felt different, more desperate, more serious. I didn't want to go. I didn't want to be pulled back into that familiar place of rescuing her, of putting her needs ahead of my own. But there was no way I could ignore her now, not after everything we had been through. I grabbed my coat, paid for my latte, and headed out the door. No more hesitation. I wasn't going to run away from this. But this time, I wasn't going to lose myself in the process. When I arrived at her apartment, I could feel the tension in the air before I even stepped inside. Lacey was pacing the living room, her face drawn with worry, her eyes frantic as she rushed to explain. There's a problem, a big one. My boss at the second job I was doing, he's been asking me to do things that aren't right. And I don't know what to do. I can't keep working there, but if I quit, I'll lose everything. My heart sank as I listened to her, and for a moment, I didn't know what to say. She had been trying so hard to do the right thing, and yet here she was, stuck in a situation that felt impossible to navigate. I walked over to her, placing my hands gently on her shoulders. "Listen, Lacey," I said softly, looking her in the eye. "You don't have to do anything you're not comfortable with. You're not alone in this. We'll figure it out, okay?" She nodded, her eyes welling up with tears. "I don't know what I'd do without you, Mom. I'm so sorry for everything." The words were raw and real, and for a moment I didn't feel the weight of what had come before. I just saw my daughter, vulnerable, scared, but willing to face her problems head on. And for the first time, I realized that maybe this was what it had all been for. Not the rent, not the power plays, but the moment when she would finally see what it meant to stand on her own 2 feet, and for me to finally see the person she was becoming. Lacey looked up at me, her eyes filled with gratitude and worry. Her vulnerability made something shift inside me. I had spent so long holding her at arm's length, trying to teach her tough lessons about responsibility, about independence. But now I was seeing her in a new light. Maybe it wasn't about punishment anymore. Maybe it was about finding a balance. The same balance I had been struggling with all along. "Mom," she whispered again, her voice trembling, "I'm scared." I pulled her into a hug, letting the weight of the moment sink in. I couldn't help but feel that old, familiar ache, the ache of watching your child face something difficult and knowing they're trying, really trying, but still so far from where you want them to be. "It's okay to be scared, Lacey," I said, squeezing her shoulders gently. "It's okay, but you don't have to do this alone." She nodded against me, her breath shaky. "I don't know how I'm going to get out of this situation. If I quit my second job, I'll lose everything I've worked for. I'll be back at square one." I pulled back, taking her hands in mine. "You don't have to stay in a bad situation just to survive. We'll figure something else out. But you need to take care of yourself first. You've got to learn when to walk away. when to cut ties with something toxic. Her face twisted with the weight of her choices, and I could see how conflicted she was. She had always tried to handle things on her own, always resistant to asking for help. But now, she was asking, and that was the part that mattered. "I don't know if I'm strong enough to quit," she said quietly. "What if I can't make it without that job? What if I fail again?" My heart ached, but I knew she was on the brink of a breakthrough. "Lacey, you've already proven you can do this. You're paying your rent. You've shown me, and more importantly, yourself, that you can stand on your own 2 feet. You've got the strength inside you to face this." She was quiet for a long moment, her gaze dropping to the floor. Finally, she whispered, "You really think I can do this?" "I do," I said firmly. "You just have to trust yourself, and, Lacey, I'll be here, every step of the way." There was a shift between us. It wasn't just about me giving her advice or her apologizing for the past. It was about us truly connecting, understanding each other for the first time in a long while. She wasn't just my daughter anymore. She was a woman facing her own battles, and she needed my support, not just my judgment. The next few days were a whirlwind for Lacey. She put in her notice at her second job and began looking for new opportunities, jobs that weren't built on exploitation or toxic demands. It was a step forward, but it felt like a giant leap for her. As I watched her take control of her life, I couldn't help but feel proud. I was no longer the woman trying to fix everything. I was just watching my daughter grow into the person I always hoped she'd become. But as Lacey started to take her power back, I realized I needed to do the same. I had spent so much time focused on her that I hadn't given myself the chance to figure out what I needed. I wasn't just a mother anymore. I was me, someone who deserved to find my own happiness, my own purpose beyond this house and the role I had been playing for years. I decided to take a break from the daily grind of my own responsibilities. I took a few days off work, just for myself. It was time I spent on things that mattered to me. I signed up for a painting class I had always wanted to try, but never found the time for. I dusted off the old novel I'd started writing years ago, hoping that maybe this time I could finally finish it. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was reclaiming my life. I wasn't just a caretaker or a fixer. I was allowed to be something more. One afternoon, as I was working on my painting, the doorbell rang. I wiped my hands on the rag I had been using and answered it, expecting it to be a delivery or a neighbor. But when I opened the door, I was surprised to see Lacey standing there, a small bag in her hand, her expression more serious than I had ever seen it before. "Mom," she said, holding out the bag to me, "I wanted to give you something." I took the bag from her, confused, and opened it. Inside was a small, hand-painted mug with the words, "Thank you," written in delicate letters. It was beautiful, simple, but meaningful. I made this for you," she said, her voice soft. "I wanted to say thank you for everything. I know I haven't always been the best daughter, but I'm trying, and I don't want you to feel like I don't appreciate what you've done for me." I stared at the mug for a moment, the warmth of her words settling into my chest. For all the times I had felt unappreciated, for all the moments when I had questioned if my sacrifice was worth it, this small gesture felt like everything. "Thank you, Lacey," I said quietly. "This means a lot." She smiled, her eyes shining with something like relief. "I just wanted you to know that I'm not going to mess it up this time. I'm going to be better. I'm going to take care of myself, and I won't take you for granted." I hugged her then, a moment that felt like the final piece of the puzzle falling into place. We had both changed. We had both grown. The past had shaped us, yes, but it no longer had a hold on us. We were moving forward, together, in a way that felt healthier, more real than before. As the days passed, I found myself spending more time with Lacey, not as the person who had to be in charge, but as a mother who was there to support her daughter, just like I always should have been. And it felt good. The distance I had created between us wasn't the barrier I thought it would be. It was just the space we both needed to figure out how to reconnect. It was a strange sense of peace, something I hadn't felt in a long time. I wasn't holding on to the power anymore. I wasn't letting resentment or past mistakes dictate my actions. I was just living. and I was doing it for me. The days after that hug felt like I was walking on a tightrope. Lacey was changing, yes, but that didn't mean the path ahead was going to be easy. I knew that. I wasn't naive. We both had so much more to learn, and there were still so many pieces of our relationship that felt fragile. But the one thing I knew for sure was that we were making progress, real progress. I spent more time on myself, carving out space for things I'd ignored for years. It was refreshing, like finally breathing after being underwater for too long. I was learning to enjoy the moments of stillness, of doing things just for the sake of it. I painted more. I worked on my novel. And, for the first time in a long time, I thought about my own happiness. But then, one afternoon, Lacey called. Her voice was shaky, full of a desperation that immediately sent a chill down my spine. "Mom, I need you. Please, can you come over right now?" she said, her words tumbling out so quickly it almost sounded like she was out of breath. I didn't hesitate. I didn't need any more details. I could hear the panic in her voice, and I knew I had to be there, no questions asked. Within 15 minutes, I was at her apartment, standing outside her door. I knocked, and the door creaked open, revealing Lacey standing there, her face pale and drawn, her hands trembling at her sides. "Mom, I don't know what to do," she whispered, her voice breaking as she let me in. "What happened, Lacey?" I asked, trying to keep my tone steady even though every instinct in me was screaming that something had gone terribly wrong. I made a mistake. I shouldn't have gone back to that job, but I didn't know what else to do, and now I think I'm in over my head." She sat down on the couch, burying her face in her hands. I sat beside her, placing a hand on her back. "You don't have to explain it all right now, but I need you to take a deep breath and tell me what happened." Lacey looked up, tears brimming in her eyes. "I went back to the second job, Mom. I thought I could handle it, that I could make enough money to keep everything together. But he's been pushing me to do things I don't want to do. And today, he told me that if I didn't, he'd fire me and report me. I don't know what he means by report me, but it sounds bad, really bad." My stomach turned. I knew exactly what kind of trouble she was in. The kind of trouble no one could get out of easily. The kind of trouble where people like that boss, the manipulative, predatory type, used fear to control. "Did he threaten you?" I asked, my voice tight with anger. Lacey nodded. "Yes, and Mom, I don't know what to do. I can't quit, I can't lose the money, but I don't want to be stuck in this situation either. I don't know if I can trust him or if he's going to follow through on what he said." I felt a surge of protectiveness rush through me. This wasn't just about her job or her rent anymore. This was about her safety, about her well-being. And as much as I wanted to tell her she could handle it, the reality of the situation was much darker. "No one has the right to threaten you, Lacey," I said, my voice low and firm. "No one. And you don't have to tolerate this. We'll figure this out, okay? We'll go to the authorities if we have to." Her eyes widened in panic. "What if he retaliates? What if he makes things worse for me?" I exhaled, trying to calm her. "We can handle that. There are laws and there are people who can protect you from people like him, but you need to stop going back there. You need to quit." She bit her lip, clearly torn. "I don't know if I can. I feel trapped." I rubbed her arm gently, trying to give her some comfort. "I understand how you feel. But listen, I've been through situations where I felt trapped too. And you know what I learned? The only way out is to make the hard choice. We can't keep letting these people have power over us. Not anymore." She looked at me, her face etched with doubt, but after a long pause, she finally nodded. "Okay, I'll quit." The next day, Lacey called me again, her voice shaky but resolute. "I did it, Mom," she said. "I told him I was done, and I walked out." I felt a sense of relief wash over me. She had done it. She had taken back control even when it scared her. It was a moment I knew she would look back on and be proud of. And though the road ahead would still be difficult, I knew that this was a major turning point for her. I told her to keep her head high and assured her that we would figure out the rest. But deep inside, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the end of her troubles, that something else, something bigger, was still out there waiting to test her. But for now, all I could do was be there. Be the mom who had learned how to let go and trust that her daughter was strong enough to handle what came next. That night, after Lacey had gone to bed, I sat at the kitchen table, thinking about everything that had happened. All the hurt, the betrayal, the power struggles. It all felt like a distant memory now, like the echo of a life that had once felt so overwhelming. But even as I sat there, alone with my thoughts, I knew that the future was still uncertain. I wasn't sure what would happen next, but I did know one thing. I had raised a daughter who could stand up for herself, who could make the hard decisions when it mattered most. And maybe, just maybe, that was the best thing I could have ever given her. The following weeks were a strange mix of relief and lingering uncertainty. Lacey was adjusting, albeit slowly, to her new routine. She'd started picking up shifts at a local cafe, doing something that felt less exploitative, less toxic. But there were moments when I could see the weight on her shoulders, the aftershocks of her last job still echoing in her mind. It wasn't something she could just brush off, and I knew that. She was different now, more cautious, but also braver, somehow. It was hard to explain, but I could sense it in the way she carried herself, in the way she made decisions. She wasn't the girl who had asked me for help without a second thought anymore. Now, she was the woman who was learning to make decisions on her own, and the more I watched her, the more I realized that she didn't need me to fix everything for her anymore. It was one morning as I was getting my coffee and watching the news on TV when I got a text from her. It was brief, but it made my heart skip a beat. "Mom, I have to talk to you. I'm really scared." I immediately called her. "Lacey, what's going on?" "Mom, I don't know how to say this, but I think he's stalking me." I froze. My entire body went cold. "Who?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer. "The guy from the job, the one I quit," she whispered, voice trembling. "I've seen him outside my apartment twice now. I don't know what he wants, but I feel like he's watching me." "Lacey, listen to me," I said, trying to keep my voice calm, but inside I was ready to burn everything down. "You need to call the police. You need to report this right now." "I don't know if I should," she said, her voice uncertain. "What if he just follows through on his threats? Do you want to wait until something happens, or do you want to take action now?" I snapped, my patience running thin. I couldn't stay calm anymore, not when my daughter was in danger. "You have to report this. This isn't just him being creepy. This is stalking, and it's illegal." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then finally she whispered, "Okay, I'll do it." When I showed up at Lacey's apartment later that day, she was sitting on the couch, her knees pulled to her chest, staring at the floor like the weight of the world was on her shoulders. I sat down next to her and placed a hand on her arm. "You did the right thing, Lacey," I said softly. "You're going to be okay." "I just feel like it's never going to end," she said, looking up at me with tears in her eyes. "No matter what I do, he's always going to be there. It's like I'm never going to get away from him." I squeezed her arm, my heart breaking for her. "You will get away from him. This isn't the end. It's just another step forward. We'll get through this." For the first time in a long while, I saw a spark of hope in her eyes. It was small, but it was there. She believed me. The next few weeks were tense. There was no denying that. The police started an investigation, and while they were doing what they could, it felt like we were all in limbo, waiting for something to break. But Lacey's resolve started to grow. She wasn't letting this define her anymore. She wasn't going to let fear dictate her choices. And then, just when I thought things might finally start to settle down, I got a call from my lawyer. I had been expecting it, but that didn't make it any easier. "Mrs. Daniels," the lawyer said, his tone professional but with an undertone of urgency. "There's been a development regarding the property." I immediately sat up straighter, my mind going into overdrive. "What kind of development?" "There's been an offer on the block you bought. Someone wants to purchase the entire property, and they're willing to pay quite a bit for it. I think this could be a huge opportunity for you." I felt my pulse quicken. I hadn't thought about the property much lately, but now, hearing this, I realized just how much it had become my leverage, my power. The thought of selling it crossed my mind briefly, but then I stopped myself. Selling meant letting go. letting go of everything I had worked for. But then something inside me stirred. This property had become more than just a financial investment. It had become a symbol of my control, a symbol of how far I had come from the woman who was humiliated at her daughter's housewarming party, the woman who was told to leave, the woman who didn't have a say in her own life. I wasn't that woman anymore. Later that week, I drove over to Lacey's apartment to talk. I knew that what I was about to tell her would shake her, but I also knew that it was time for me to make the next move. "Lacey," I started, "I've been thinking about the property, and I think it might be time to make a decision about it." She raised an eyebrow, sitting up a little straighter. "What do you mean? You're not going to sell it, are you?" I paused. "I don't know yet. I'm considering the offer I got. It might be the right time to cash out." She shook her head. "But Mom, it's your hard work. You've built all of this. You can't just give it up." I looked at her, my expression serious. "Lacey, this isn't just about the money. It's about control. I did this for me. I'm not just a mother anymore, or a fixer. I'm a woman with power, and I'm taking that power back." She stared at me for a moment, her eyes searching my face. Then, slowly, she nodded. "I get it, Mom. You deserve this." I smiled at her, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. The decision wasn't just about the property. It was about reclaiming my life in a way that felt right for me. And no matter where this journey took me, I knew I had the strength to face it. A few days later, I accepted the offer to sell the block. It was a hard decision, but it was the right one. The money would give me the freedom to explore new ventures, to finally do the things I had put on hold for so long. As for Lacey, she was still working on building her new life, but she was doing it with a strength I hadn't seen before. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like we were both walking down our own paths, stronger, wiser, and ready to take on whatever came next. Months passed. The chaos of the property sale eventually settled, but there was a stillness in the air, almost like a pause before something big happened. I watched Lacey, my daughter, making her way through life with more confidence than I'd seen in years. She was still dealing with some lingering fears from the harassment at her old job, but I could see she was taking the reins of her life, making decisions that aligned with her newfound sense of strength. But just when things seemed like they were finally starting to smooth over, I got a phone call that completely flipped my world upside down again. It was the buyer of the property. "Mrs. Daniels," he said, his voice smooth but with a hint of something I couldn't quite place. "There's been a development. We've run into some complications with the deal." My stomach churned. "What kind of complications?" "There's been a discrepancy with the paperwork," he continued, not even pausing to let me react. "We need to meet in person to finalize things. The contract will be void if we don't move fast." The weight of his words sank in. I wasn't an idiot. This wasn't just about paperwork. This was a power play, one I hadn't expected, one that felt far too familiar. "Fine," I said, forcing my voice to remain steady. "We'll meet. Let's sort this out." When I arrived at his office, the moment I walked in, I felt it. The same feeling I'd had when I first stepped into the world of landlords, contracts, and manipulation. The feeling of being watched, the feeling that something wasn't quite right. He was seated behind a massive wooden desk, papers strewn across it in no particular order, as if he had been expecting this meeting for a while. "Mrs. Daniels," he said with that same unsettling smoothness, "please have a seat." I sat down across from him, folding my arms. "Let's get to the point. What's really going on?" He smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. "It's simple, really. We've reviewed the property, and we've realized that it's worth much more than we initially thought. In fact, it's much more valuable than the price we agreed upon. So we need to renegotiate the deal." I narrowed my eyes. "Renegotiate? After the contract has already been signed? That's not how business works." His smile never faltered. But you see, we didn't factor in some very important details. The zoning laws around the block have changed recently. There are new opportunities for high-rise developments. Your property is now sitting on a gold mine, and, well, I'd be doing you a favor if we made this new deal. I leaned forward, my voice dropping low. "A favor? Or is this just a way for you to try and take advantage of me?" He shrugged casually. "The choice is yours. Either we renegotiate or the deal falls through and you'll be left with nothing. My mind raced. This was a classic power move. He was trying to leverage my desperation. He thought I was weak, but I wasn't. Not anymore. I'm not some rookie you can intimidate, I said, my tone ice cold. I've been through much worse than this, and I won't be bullied into giving up something that's mine. We had an agreement. He smirked. I think you'll find, Mrs. Daniels, that this is how things work when you're dealing with people who know the game. I stood up, my fists clenched at my sides. I had been patient, I had played nice. But this was the line. I'm not here to play games with you, I said, my voice steady but laced with finality. If you think you can threaten me, you're sadly mistaken. I'll take this to court. I'll fight you with everything I have. For the first time, his cool demeanor cracked slightly. His gaze hardened, but I could see the fear behind his eyes. You really want to go that route? He asked, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous whisper. Absolutely, I said, turning to walk out of the room. You don't know who you're messing with. It was a decision that would change everything. The next few weeks were filled with tension, endless phone calls with my lawyer, and the mounting realization that I was going to have to fight this battle for everything I had. I wasn't just fighting for money or property, I was fighting for control over my life, for the ability to say, no, this isn't happening. Lacey saw the change in me. She saw the fire I had ignited in myself again, and I could tell she was both proud and terrified. Proud that I was standing up for myself, terrified because she knew how hard this fight would be. One night, as I was sitting on the porch of my new home, one that I had worked so hard for, paid for with my own hands, Lacey sat next to me, silently watching the sunset. You're really going to do this, aren't you? She asked, her voice small but strong. I nodded. I have to, Lacey. I can't let him do this to me, to us. It's not just about the property. It's about showing that I'm not afraid anymore. She looked at me, a soft smile crossing her face. I'm proud of you, Mom. You've come so far. Thank you, I whispered, fighting the lump in my throat. I just want you to know, no matter what happens, you'll always be my priority. This fight, it's not just for me. It's for us. For the future. Lacey hugged me tightly. I get it, Mom, and I'm with you, always. It was a battle I couldn't walk away from, no matter the cost. But I wasn't walking into this blindly anymore. I had faced my demons. I had faced him, and now I would win. The moment of truth was coming. The final leg of this battle wasn't just about money or even winning, though I would fight for that. No, it was about something deeper. Something I hadn't fully understood until I was deep in the trenches of this war. It was about reclaiming everything that had been taken from me, about proving that I could come back from the worst moments of my life and emerge stronger. I woke up one morning to a knock at the door. It was early, too early for any real business. But the urgency in the knock sent a chill down my spine. I opened it to find my lawyer standing there, his face grim. Mrs. Daniels, he said, we've got a problem. I let out a breath, my stomach sinking. What now? It's worse than we thought. The buyer, well, he's not backing down. He's using his connections to put pressure on the judge. He's found a loophole. He's trying to invalidate the original contract, claiming you didn't have full knowledge of the zoning changes when you sold the property. I blinked. He's lying. I know, he said, running a hand through his hair. But he's not going to back off easily. He's already got a team of people working on it. I'm just saying the stakes have been raised. I stood there, trying to process the information, but it felt like everything was spinning around me. How was this even possible? The contract had been clear. I had been through the process with my lawyer. Everything was on the up and up. Is there any way to stop this? I asked, trying to keep the panic out of my voice. We need to get ahead of this, he said. We need to make a bold move, something that shows him you won't back down, something that shifts the power back to your side. I felt the fire stir within me again. It wasn't just about the fight for the property, it was about sending a message. I wasn't the woman who had been humiliated in front of her daughter's friends. I wasn't the woman who had been shoved aside. I was someone who could stand up no matter how hard the fight, no matter how much they pushed me. Do whatever it takes, I said, my voice steady with determination. We're not backing down. This ends now. The next week was a blur of strategy meetings, late-night phone calls, and navigating through the maze of legalities. But each move I made, each document I signed, felt like it was bringing me closer to something bigger than just winning. It was about proving that I wasn't just the victim here. I was in control of my own destiny, and I wasn't going to let anyone take that away. And then, the day finally came, the day of the court hearing. The courtroom was cold and sterile, filled with the kind of tension you could cut with a knife. I sat at the table with my lawyer, my heart thudding in my chest, but my resolve as solid as the floor beneath me. Lacey was sitting behind me, her eyes wide with concern but also with pride. She was watching me face my greatest challenge, and I could see in her expression that she knew this moment meant everything. The opposing counsel, cold, smug, the same man who had tried to bully me from the start, was seated at the other table, his eyes flicking over to mine with a knowing smirk. He thought this was his victory. He thought he could break me, but he hadn't accounted for the years of hard lessons. He hadn't accounted for the quiet strength that had been building in me, the lessons of resilience I had taught myself over the years. And he certainly hadn't accounted for Lacey, my daughter, who was learning to stand on her own 2 feet and supporting me with every breath. The judge walked in, signaling the start of the session. The air thickened and the room fell into complete silence. "Mrs. Daniels," the judge said, his voice measured, "it's come to my attention that there are issues regarding the initial contract. Your counsel has requested a full review of the terms. Please present your case." I stood, my hands gripping the edge of the table as I locked eyes with the judge. This was it. This was the moment where everything hinged. "Your Honor," I said, my voice clear and unwavering, "I did not sign that contract under duress. I knew exactly what I was doing, and I knew the value of the property. The other side claims that there were zoning issues I was unaware of, that I had no knowledge of the changes. That is a lie." I glanced over at the opposing counsel, who shifted uncomfortably in his seat. I wasn't backing down now. I did my due diligence. I wasn't taken advantage of. This contract was signed based on the terms that were available at the time, and now I am being bullied into renegotiating. No, into losing my property based on an underhanded tactic. This is an abuse of power, and I will not stand for it. The room was silent for a long moment, the tension palpable. I could feel my heart racing, but I also felt a calm certainty inside me. I had said my piece. I had done everything I could. The judge turned to the opposing counsel. "You are asserting that Mrs. Daniels did not fully understand the details of the agreement?" He hesitated, glancing at his papers. "We believe there were details regarding the zoning laws that were not made clear." "I know what he's trying to do," I interjected, my voice rising. "This is a last-ditch attempt to rob me of what is rightfully mine." The judge raised a hand to calm the room. "I see. I will review the evidence and make a ruling accordingly." And then we waited. The decision came a few days later, and when I received that letter, I felt my heart skip a beat. I had won. The contract stood. The buyer's claim was invalid. Not only had I secured my property, but I had also secured my dignity. I had stood up for myself and for my family. I had fought through fear, humiliation, and threats, and I had won. As I sat down with Lacey that evening, watching the sun set over the horizon, she turned to me, a smile breaking across her face. "Mom," she said, "you did it. You really did it." I smiled back, my heart full. "We did it, Lacey, together." This was more than a victory. It was a lesson, a reminder that no matter how hard life gets, no matter how much you're pushed down or humiliated, you can always rise. And in that moment, I knew my fight had only just begun. But no matter what came next, I was ready. So for all of you out there, whatever you're facing, however big the mountain in front of you seems, remember, you're stronger than you think. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Before I go, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I love reading your messages and hearing your stories. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more. Now, enjoy the next chapter of your own story.